Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing The Lighthouse. This was written and directed by Robert Eggers. This is his second film and stars Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. The film really focuses on two lighthouse keepers. Ephraim Winslow, played by Robert Pattinson, and Thomas Wake, played by Willem Dafoe. It looks at how they are trying to maintain their sanity while living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s, looking after a lighthouse. Strange things start to happen, and they're not quite sure what's real and what's not. And they slowly descend into madness. Is there an escape from the wallless prison of the mind? This was a film we didn't get at our cinema. It was a film I really wanted to see because of the trailer. It looked unique and crazy and interesting, and I like films that are a bit different, and it's refreshing to see something like this. I think Robert Eggers is a really talented filmmaker, and he makes his things realistic and authentic to the period. And this film has a great example of that, even down to the point of building the interiors of the lighthouse and how they could open a drawer and there'd be some sort of implement or something from that period within it. So they really felt immersed in that time period, and I really loved that. He's all about history, and he's sort of obsessed with history, and you can tell by this and The Witch that he's choosing different time periods in history. His next film's The Norseman, so he's choosing another time period. There's nothing about him that seems he's going to do a film set in the present. It's all about history, and that's his bag and what interests him the most. And I think because of that, he's able to craft some really interesting films. There's a lot to like about this movie, especially for those who like something a little different. There's so much about this, it feels like a silent film, especially the German expressionist sort of cinema and what they were able to craft here, and just the way it was executed, the creepiness of it, the fact it was shot in black and white, the stuff they choose to put into shots and not put in shots, and the use of the camera is very effective. And also the framing of the film, it's sort of framed in a 3x4 sort of traditional look of films from the 20s, and that gives it something else as well. I think the camera work is beautiful, it's beautifully shot, it's lit just enough to see what you need to see. In some parts it's a little dark, and it's a film you probably wouldn't need to see at night time or in a dark room because you might not quite see what's completely going on. I like the feel of the film. There's this unsettlingness, there's this feel that anything could happen and something bad is happened just around the corner. The music is really fantastic. It's sort of operatic in many ways, and it sort of makes you feel like something is going to happen. And you fear for these two lighthouse keepers because you don't know what's going to happen next. There's a lot of subtext here, and I feel that Eggers has taken a lot from Greek mythology, because there's just certain imagery that happens in this film and certain scenes that take place that just feel like Greek mythology in many ways. And that adds an interesting element to it. It's this type of film that makes you really think. You've got to sort of think about what's going on and work it out for yourself, because not all the answers are there. You just have more questions, and it's about sort of analysing and thinking about the films. That's the type of film I really like, where it makes you think long after you've watched the movie. But I think besides the visuals, it's the acting is just fantastic in this. The two leads are just brilliant to watch. Willem Dafoe, I'm surprised he's never won an Oscar. He's at peak performance here. He's just fantastic. He steals most of the movie, just with his particular way of speaking and the accent he has and the way he's got a sort of a limp, and there's a lot of mystery to him. I found him the most interesting and captivating character out of the two. And I wanted to know more about him, and he just sort of drew me into the world and really suited the film and being a lighthouse keeper in many ways. And Pattinson has a brilliant turn here as well. He's an actor I've really enjoyed, not obviously the Twilight films, but everything he's done after that I've enjoyed. But this is sort of him finding his way, getting a peak performance, and also choosing material that's a little different and something refreshing for him to play and experiment with. And the third act of the film is really, he owns it. His performance just escalates in insanity. He starts to see things we don't know whether are real or not. He slowly starts to descend into madness, which is really brilliantly executed. And the chemistry he has with Willem Dafoe is really great as well. It's like it's broken into two halves. One's completely owned by Willem Dafoe's character, Thomas Wake, and the second half is really owned by Robert Pattinson's character, Ephraim Winslow. And it's kind of interesting to sort of see the film broken up like that. I don't think this film's going to be for everyone, but there is stuff there if people really like something refreshing and unique. And Robert Eggers is a really refreshing director, and I'm really happy he's making films and making the films he wants to make. He's a director I will continuously watch his films because I think they're really interesting and fascinating. And his films are sort of a slow burn in a lot of ways. They take the time to build the characters and then descend into the madness and horror and all that sort of elements. There are some surprising horror moments in this, much like The Witch, that sort of come out of left of field but work for the story he's telling. But they are very violent and graphic in their execution, but they're just really well done. There's so much about this film that I just had to think about, was captivated by. I just think it's one of the most refreshing films I've seen in a while. And there was so much I really enjoyed about it, and so much that just really blew my mind. It reminded me of David Lynch in many parts of the films, especially when they go into insanity and what they're seeing is questioned and their minds start to fall apart and unravel. And it just felt like David Lynch in many ways, especially particular scenes where the characters are laughing really loudly and you can't hear what they're saying or talking to themselves or the stuff they're starting to experience. It's a film from the beginning, you know something bad's going to happen. You just have that sense, but you don't know when it's going to happen. And it sort of slowly draws you in because of that. You're drawn into it to try and work out what's going on. You're captivated by what's happening. You find the characters kind of interesting, and you start to question their motives and their decisions and the things that they do in the film and why they go about them. There's something sort of revealed later in the movie that's, as Willem Dafoe's character says, he spills his beans. Winslow, he tells him something that changes the way we look at the character. Winslow's a character we see the world through and we go on the journey with. And for him to sort of change, probably halfway in the film, it's just an interesting element that's added to it. There's a lot of really crazy and bizarre moments where there's them dancing or drinking or singing or hugging each other. It's just interesting to show what happens when you're stuck on one particular place, in a particular place with one other person and there's nobody else around. You start to go a bit crazy, you start to get a bit stir crazy and have a bit of cabin fever. And this film sort of encompasses that. I enjoyed my experience with it, and it's a film I really need to relive and watch again, because I feel in a lot of ways it's like what Ari Aster did with Midsummer. Midsummer I really liked, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. And it felt like I missed something. It felt like I needed to revisit the film. And that's exactly the same with this movie. Even though I really liked it, I just didn't like it as much as I wanted to. I really wanted to love this film. But it is still a really well-made film. Final thoughts. At the essence, I think it's really a Greek mythology story. I think Winslow represents Prometheus. And for people who know Greek mythology, know what happened to Prometheus in the end. It's kind of has that element to it. Willem Dafoe's character, Thomas Wake, is kind of a Zeus character. Not that he has special powers or does anything like that, but there's moments where you see him in a different way, in a different costume and different look, that starts to make you wonder who he really is. Is he what he seems? Or is he something else? Is Winslow starting to lose his mind and seeing him in a particular light rather than what he actually is? Without giving too much away, there's a couple of moments that really stick out that made me think of Greek mythology. There's a moment where Pattinson's character's crawling and Willem Dafoe grabs him. Dafoe's naked and this light comes from his eyes that sort of hits him, and it's sort of like this freeze frame, which is a very iconic imagery in sort of Greek mythology. So I'm not quite sure where that fits into it, but I really like that imagery. And the lighthouse itself, the light within the lighthouse, could represent Zeus's trident, or it could be like heaven to them, heaven to Greek gods, which is Elysium. It could be Elysium. And that's very interesting. And the end of the film sort of portrays something that could really be Winslow's character trapped in hell. It is really that Greek mythology story, just set in 1890s rather than when Greek mythology was around, the myths began. There's a moment where Winslow sort of does something and then he falls back down, and it's like he gets so close to heaven but they won't let him in, and he falls back down to the ground, being stuck in hell in a repetitiveness that he can't get out of. That keeps happening and going on. He's having memories of things, but are they memories or nightmares? And he's sort of stuck in this sort of place that he can't get out of. And it's repeated day in, day out. That's sort of what I feel from it. And you'll know what I mean when you get to the last shot of the film that sort of encompasses that whole mythology, myth and story that is known about Prometheus and Zeus. I'm going to give The Lighthouse 4 out of 5. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I really wanted to. It's still worth watching if you like something different, refreshing, and interesting, but I don't think it's going to be for everyone. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.